Thank you, Ms. Divya Gokulnath, for joining us. And we had a full day of getting women entrepreneurs to share their stories and how they're making impact. Let me start by asking you, how have been the last 12 months for you personally and professionally? I know on the business front, there has been an acceleration, but you're also a mother. You also have a role of managing a household along with being an entrepreneur. So give us a sense of how have been the last 12 months for you personally and professionally.
I think, I always joke and say that if working mothers have made it through the last 12 months, they'll make it easily through the next decade. Because, it's not really easy managing home, managing work, managing family. And I'm blessed to be a mother the second time 5 months back. So my younger one is 5 months old. So it's been a roller coaster ride, but I've enjoyed it. And I think one thing that's really worked personally, I'll say, is creating artificial boundaries. Because prior to this, I've never taken a break this long, stayed at home. It won't be a break. I would say work from home this long ever before. The only time I was at home was in the 3-month period after my first son was born. Back then maternity period was only 3 months in 2013. And this time, literally for the last 1 year, I've been completely working from home, doing everything from home. So it's been a roller coaster ride. Prior to this, it was all about, it was easy because you could block yourself off home, go to work, create a physical boundary for yourself. But then what happens right now is you have to put an artificial boundary. Otherwise, if you try to do the whole multitasking bit, which women do so well, it'll come back and hit you, because then you try to do 10 things at one time, end up giving only 10% to each of it. So my policy is more like, try to do one thing at a time and give 100% to it, one by one.
That's actually, I love both the things you said right at the start. One, if working mothers can survive these 12 months, they can get through the next century and be successful. And second is, I said this in the morning, Divya, that women have two amazing qualities. One, of course, they're more compassionate, they're more, considerate, but they also have a quality of being in the moment, being mindful, giving it your 100%. And it may sound oxymoronish, they also have the ability to multitask. Because as a working mother, they are multitasking, kind of juggling both. So, but I like the fact that you say that do one thing at a time, give it your 100%, and make something out of it. Let me change the gears to entrepreneurship. Now, Byju's is becoming bigger and bigger by month. I wouldn't even say quarter, by the month. There is either an acquisition or there is raising of capital. And it is a new market being kind of explored, new users being added, new products being launched. So the pace of acceleration in the last 12 months has been huge. Also, COVID has been the Chief Digital Transformation Officer. Give us a sense of how big is the edutech opportunity is. Of course, while Byju's is the predominant player and the largest player in this business, give us a sense of opportunities that exist for other entrepreneurs to be able to look at them.
Sure. So, maybe I can, start by saying that if you think about it, and speaking about the pandemic, if we were hit by a pandemic like this 100 years ago, literally everything would have stopped. But this time around, even though the economy was hit, I'm not denying it, a lot of things are still continuing. Some of them even more efficiently, whether it's an event like this where so many of us are able to attend, celebrate together, or be it working or even learning from home. So I think the last year, in fact, has been a year filled with a lot of changes, learnings, innovations. Technology has been a constant here. And I think that's what has been an enabler, enabling and empowering us to all continue with our lives in every possible way. So maybe every crisis brings an opportunity, and that's how I would like to look at it. If you think about it, our classrooms have changed for the first time in 100 years. What did not happen in decades happened in weeks, happened in days. All stakeholders literally transitioned online to it was not very easy to do it, but every stakeholder in education, be it institutions, schools, teachers, students, everybody transitioned online. Online learning came to the forefront. It helped millions of students learn across the globe. So two very interesting numbers talking about Byju, since you spoke about it. In the first 4.5 years since we launched the app, we had 45 million learners on our learning app. And just in the last 1 year, we added 45 million more new students on our app. So more and more students are learning online. And this number is actually testament to the fact that the future of learning has online in it. I'm not saying it's 100% online, but it has online in it. It's something I would like to call it hybrid or blending, right? The best of the online and the offline world, because the pandemic has been an inflection point for edtech especially. And though the situation is not good, we are fortunate to be in a segment of positive relevance. So, and maybe now I can talk about what we did at Byju's. While schools faced a global shutdown, the first thing we did is that we made our app free. We opened up the content so that students could continue learning. We knew that students were missing out on the regularity of school. We launched free live classes, which ensured that students could continue learning from home from some of the best teachers. We also fast-tracked, we launched multiple new products, new subjects, also released the app in vernacular languages like Hindi, Telugu, Bengali, and Gujarati, just to name a few of them. So if anything, I think the last 1 year has shown us the opportunity of what the future of learning could possibly look like, the best of online and offline. So with an option, and I think the best part is that students now have an option to learn in a matter that suits them, in a way that suits them. The power of flexible learning, it'll lie in the hands of students. For the first time, students will take a driver's seat. It was very one-to-many approach, but right now it's a very one-to-one model. There could be a concept where there is no backbencher, and for the first time, a student could decide how, when, where they can actually want to, and how they want to learn. So these are the things which speaking about online learning. But again, like I said, there are subjects, there are concepts that can be taught and learned better online, like math, like science, like coding. But on the other hand, there are skills that students pick up at school that cannot be really replicated online. Social skills like teamwork, life skills like empathy, all of this can be learned only when a child is growing up with their teachers, growing up with their friends. I always like to give a comparison of how we can play FIFA with our friends through PlayStation, enjoy the game, pick up a few strategies maybe, but to really feel the pulse of the game, to learn team spirit, live the game, you really need to have people on your side. That's when it's an advantage. So yeah, so I think, and talking about the startup ecosystem, it's all education, and edtech is almost one of the most impactful sectors to be in today. And I say that because there is so much to be done here. We've hardly done enough, because there is the potential and opportunity is immense. Technology in education can actually play a major role in empowering teachers to teach better online, help students learn better online, helps institutions transition online seamlessly. So there's so much that can be done in the startup space, but how well it's done is what is going to differentiate. Because see, right now there is so much interest in edtech, there is also a chance that quality can go down. It's not just about digitizing a textbook. EdTech is much beyond that. It's about high quality learning. It's about better learning. So when you talk about a startup, I think it's important to be focused on your goals, focused on what you want to achieve, but be very flexible with how you are going to achieve it. So at Byju's, we've always been fixated on our mission and very flexible in the way we've executed, because we've used technology at every point more like an enabler, more like a self-disruptor. And our idea has always been about pushing our boundaries and doing everything within the learning space. It's never changed. So we are actually a decade-old company, even though our app was launched just 4.5 years back, 5.5 years back, actually, 2015. So, but if you had asked us this question, 10 years back, what is your aim? It is to create an impact in the way children learn. And if you ask us today, you ask us 10 years from now, the answer will be the same. So I think that's very, very important. And when I talk about flexible with execution, I mean, not being afraid to disrupt yourself. If something can be done in a better way, go back, take big risks, put big bets, but then once you take a decision, don't look back on it. So these are a few things which we've done. And while we've grown as a company for our student community, we've also done some things on our own. We've done a lot of things actually with first principles, because we are forerunners of the segment. Apps itself, when you leave alone learning apps, right? In 2015, when we launched, the whole concept of using an app itself was something very, very new. So we've written our own rule book. We've created our own benchmarks. It's not a cut, copy, paste model, and everybody knows that. It's completely made in India kind of a story. So, but I think we've also been cognizant that we're not an expert in everything, and that's where we managed to integrate some rockstar companies. That's what you were speaking about. A lot of inorganic growth happens that way, along the way, to increase the end value finally for students, to help them learn better. That's always the mission. And I think when we acquire and integrate, it's not about becoming bigger, it's also about becoming better together. So that's roughly that. And maybe if you want, I could speak about what each of the, because we've had 3 major integrations in the last 3 years. If you would like, I can also like touch upon why.
We'd love to. We're all aware of the acquisition. So if you can take latest being Aakash, the other bigger one was White Hat Junior, and then you've done a series of small and mid-sized acquisitions. So take us through them. How does your vision kind of align with what the founders of these businesses had, and going forward, what is the offering going to be like?
Yes. So for us, bringing in strong companies and mindsets of people who have been decades in the business. For example, like Aakash, it's more complementary. It's again, it's not about competition. It's about doing something better together, like I said. So maybe I will start by talking about 3 of our biggest acquisitions. The first being Osmo, which was a US-based company. We integrated Osmo's computer vision technology into our product for lower grades actually within just 3 months. And we've always been I think we've done our integrations in a very different way. For us, it's not just about the product, it's also about the team. So I think one thing that we are all very proud of is the way in which we've managed to integrate teams and retain that founder mindset. So all the co-founders are still here, even in all the integrations that we've done so far. And that's critical to keep. If you want to take it from X to 10X, you need the founders by your side. And it's about having a better team. When we are together, it's not about one person buying another person, but about how you're stronger when you come together. So with Osmo, for example, even before we finalized and we actually signed the agreement and everything was professionally done, we've already started working with the product teams, integrating their technology. And when we launched our lower grade products for 3 months, it had the computer vision technology which Osmo had to offer. And speaking about Aakash, the integration of Aakash is another example of us partnering with India's most trusted brand for test preparation. And this was keeping in mind that the future of learning is actually blended. And the complementary models will provide a big value addition for students. So imagine that a student can decide whether they want to come to a center for classes or take it at home. They want to attend tests in the center or take it at home. It's completely their choice. And I think students need this choice because every student is different. We cannot have a one-size-fits-all approach anymore. So the aim is to provide a new offering, which is quality-driven, which is innovative, also affordable. So that's about Aakash. And speaking about White Hat Junior, it's something that has helped us move into the one-on-one
national market.
Synchronous live tutoring model. So White Hat had done a great job at scaling this model with over 11,000 plus teachers, all women. So the scope is actually massive. And if you think about, and I'll speak a little bit more about the White Hat integration, because this strong army of women teachers based out of India are teaching students across the globe. In a way, we are taking education from India to the world, right? So, in fact, this is our first global product, Byju's Future School, where we aim to define the schools of tomorrow. And coming May, that is next month, we are launching in the US, UK, Indonesia, Australia, Mexico, and Brazil. So that's in a way, this product, this offering of taking teachers from India to the world is our first global product. And it's actually an indicator that the golden era of teaching is coming back and empowering so many women. Because if you look at the statistics of workforce also, although 50% of our graduates are women, only 23% of them are in the workforce. So there's a huge untapped potential here to make an impact.
Thank you so much, Divya, for taking us through how collaborative forces can multiply the impact, and how founders are the key to moving from X to 10X, as you said, how you deeply collaborate with them. And the fact that all of them are still with the business and looking to be with the business for the near future augurs well, both for the founders and for the businesses. Now, let me shift gears. We're at a Women Entrepreneurship Summit. It's the 3rd year of the BW Disrupt Business World Women Entrepreneurship Summit and Awards. At 6 p.m., Shri Rahamon Mishra, who's our chief guest, and he's the Secretary Child and Women Development, and he's been instrumental in developing a lot of schemes, and entrepreneurs at the grassroots level will join us, and so will our jury chair, Ms. Zia Modi and Ms. Samina Hamid. So we can't not ask you about being a woman and being an entrepreneur. Okay, now, though gender shouldn't be a prerequisite for doing or anything or achieving anything except for being a mother, I think that's where the gender matters. But beyond that, women are as capable or more capable and unique, if I may say. So tell me, as a women entrepreneur, when you see yourself, you see other women entrepreneurs, what is the progress you think India has made in the last 1 decade or 2 decades? But what do you think should be done even more to foster women entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so like especially when you ask me, and I've been asked this question a lot of late, how does it feel, how do you, like, especially because that throws light on the fact that a lot of women are not as lucky as I was to get an opportunity. And I've come to realize that I'm lucky, unlike a lot of other women who have never faced a single challenge because I'm a girl. So being the only child to working parents, I was given every opportunity that would have been given if that child was a boy. So when people ask me about the challenges, the obstacles, the setbacks, what does it mean to be a woman entrepreneur, I realized that this sort of question came to me only once I started working. So the answer to that, at least from my point of view, is that look at me as an example of what happens when a girl is given an equal opportunity. So that's what we need to do for all girls, give equal opportunities. So
I couldn't have agreed more. And I'm just saying, I'm interrupting you for a sec. I said in the morning, right at the upfront when I started, and then I was doing this conversation with Ms. Amina Hamid, who's the vice chairperson of CIPLA, that growth and achievement is a function of opportunity. It's not a function of talent. There are lots of talented women out there. It's just that they don't get an opportunity. So I fully echo what you're saying.
Yeah.
Go on.
True. So that's what. So there are, and maybe I can talk about and go back to the statistic which I spoke about, because that itself shows the opportunity where 50% of graduates in India itself are women, but only 23% of them are in the workforce. That means something. So, and I can speak for education because there are multiple opportunities for women in the education world. Firstly, as teachers, the connection that women have with students is completely different. Also, even the mentoring team, which we have in Byju's, majority of them are women. They understand what children need. They strike a chord so well. It comes very naturally to them. So for women who have good education, now is actually the opportunity for them to take charge of their lives and careers. But that's quite easy for me to say. Difficult to implement, largely because we live in a patriarchal society. There's a lot to be done in terms of representation for women. And like you said, a lot has improved in terms of boardroom representation, but still the numbers are very dismal. A lot more can be done, a lot more should be done. But that being said, you asked me what can organizations do? They can do a lot, because diversity is actually no more a feminist notion. I think it needs to be perceived as a corporate agenda, if anything. This balance can be attained if it is thought about consciously from the inception of the company. That's something that has worked for us, and not be treated as an afterthought, really. Because and why I'm saying this is, a quarter of the businesses globally don't have women in senior roles. And since senior leadership is what is projected to the outside world, it sets up a notion that women just can't make it to senior roles or make it to senior positions. So this can be dealt with if core teams that start out businesses address this at inception and hire accordingly. And while a lot is being done to address diversity, a few core changes can have a much bigger impact, I feel, than just some policy changes. Hiring initially without bias, for example. And enough studies show that women tend to hire more women to support them, and this can actually set the ball rolling for diversity throughout the organization. And another thing that companies can do is promoting from within, and I've seen that works rather than just hiring laterally, because there are so many fabulous women who run the show from behind the scenes, and I've seen that happen. So it's important to bring them up and call them out. So in Byju's, we've seen that the balance starts from the top, because we've been a very diverse organization. 33% of our board is women. Close to half our top management is women. 40% of our workforce is women. So the top-down approach is something that actually works if you think about it from the beginning. And I think when women come to support each other, cheer each other on, there's nothing that can stand in their way. That being said, while companies can contribute in ensuring diversity, I would say family support is the one that can really give women an impetus to contribute professionally. There's nothing like the support of your family. I won't be able to do this talk if not for my parents who are taking care of my younger son today. I would not have been able to rise in my career if my in-laws were not supporting me. So it's all of them who come together and so you are actually standing on the shoulders of so many people who are sacrificing their time for you. So that being said, and knowing that my parents supported my ambitions, gave me the liberty to make my own decisions, and gave me the strength to chase my dreams and goals fearlessly. So that's something which is invaluable. And looking back now, because I never realized it then, I saw a mentor in my working mother who managed a single child. I don't have siblings, so I can imagine how much of her time I would have needed, plus profession beautifully. I saw a mentor in each of my aunts, one a biotechnologist, one a banker, two who work in administration, and took it for granted that I would also contribute professionally when I grow up. So today when I speak to you, I realize that all of these must have, had an impact, but it's not something that, it's something that plays on you on the sides as you
it is
grow.
Subconscious. It is in your subconscious.
Yeah. So
that's right. You're so real when you talk, Divya. You're so right that family support is the most important, because those are the people you look up to for inspiration, for acknowledgement, for you want to celebrate your best moments with them. What they say matters. What they believe in about you matters. So you're absolutely right. Both parents as well as in-laws matter in the scheme of things. Let me move to another dimension of women entrepreneurship. During the pandemic, there was this study by CNN which said, or at least the story on CNN, not sure of the study, which said that countries that were led by women leaders, and it gave the example of New Zealand, gave the example of Germany, did well in dealing with the pandemic because they were naturally focused at doing one thing, and that was dealing with the pandemic. They were more open to data and scientific facts, and they were more sensitive to what were happening to people. So the feminine leadership, so to say, kind of saved the day for those countries. So what do you have to say about women being in leadership positions? And you already talked about the fact that women can create more leaders at all levels. You gave statistics of your company in terms of at leadership levels, in terms of 40% workforce being women. But tell me, do you believe that women make better leaders and better entrepreneurs than men? Especially if you had to look at them at risk-taking and ambition, do you think women match up with men in terms of risk-taking and ambition?
So I would never say better. I would say equal. Because if you look at probably some of the most successful business leaders or any leaders, there is always, even if it's a man, there is some sort of feminine trait which helps him succeed. Like empathy is a skill which is considered feminine, but it's also integral for a leader irrespective of gender. So I would not say it's about a gender, but I would say it's a quality. You need to have those qualities irrespective of which gender you are, and that's what defines a true leader. So if I had to define a leader, I would define them based on traits, like somebody who's continuously learning, someone who takes feedback, someone who's empathetic, someone who's humble, someone who's grounded, someone who can take risks. So this could apply to a guy, this could apply to a girl. It's about given an equal opportunity. If you have those traits, you're bound to succeed. So I would never limit it by gender, but I would limit it more by quality and traits.
Beautiful. Again, a lot of women who are achievers and who are leaders acknowledge the uniqueness of being a woman and a leader, acknowledge the uniqueness of being a woman and an entrepreneur, but they'd like to be judged on what they bring to the table and their impact rather than on their gender. So I get that. And you're right. You rightly said, by the way, wise sage said that nobody is superior, nobody is inferior. Everyone is unique, and your authenticity is what makes you who you are. So it's not about, a gender being superior, a gender being inferior. But yes, women have certain special qualities which are, I don't want to stereotype, but which are unique to women. Divya, let me ask you, you've seen the last 12 months, you gave us statistics of, in the first 4.5 years, 45 million earners on the platform. In the last 12 months, another 45 million added, right? Now, I want to give you statistics from various businesses. If you look at US e-commerce market, last 20 years, it was 16% and 10% added in the last 12 months. If you look at in the Indian stock market, almost 100% new investors on the stock market. If you look at fintech transactions or payments, let me take one company, let's say Paytm. Paytm did in March about 1.5 billion transactions on its app. It had done almost 1 billion in 2015 and about 2 billion in 2016. Now 1.5 billion in 1 month. So clearly digital acceleration, people's ability to use apps, e-commerce, live a digital life are enhancing, a contactless life, if I may say. Going forward, what are the big trends you see accelerating? Trends that may be small right now, but like a lot of things will gain tremendous traction over the next few months. Give us a sense of the future. Give us a peek into the future, because you look at adoption data of your own app. You look at other businesses. So from the vantage point that you have, give us a sense of what is the future bringing to us.
Sure. And I spoke about education. Maybe I can talk about work, because I think there was then a lot of people have spoken about this, where they did this ad where the word flexible being added increased the job applicants from women by a massive percentage. So maybe I can talk about the future of work, because that also is something which is headed the blended way, because we realize that we don't need to travel from one country to another country to just meet someone. It's so easy at the touch of a button, we're able to do it. But again, you need to go to office because you miss on the chai time with your friends. I mean, it becomes very transactional when you just go to an event. Normally what would happen is that we just take both of us for this event. We would speak before the event, we would have a cup of coffee, and then we would do the talk, and then probably interact. But then now it's just doing the talk. So it's the risk of completely going online, even in working and meeting, is that it becomes transactional. So I feel even the future of work would be something which is blended. That being said, the advantage of the online part, and I've seen that over the last 12 months, is that I've come to understand our teams, families much better than before. Now there is a family behind the person. There is a story behind everybody who's helping you build the company. You know person A's cat better, person B's strengths better, person C's husband better. So it's giving you, it creates a more humane approach to working. So that being said, there are advantages and disadvantages of, both in isolation, but the best form of the future of work would be the blended form, where people come, like how we learn, we come whenever we want to come to the center for the corridor time, for clearing our doubts, for meeting the teachers. But the rest of the time when we're doing something on our own, we do it at the pace that suits us the best. So I think the future of learning and the future of work are in that way very, very similar. So I would like to speak about that.
Fantastic. You cannot talk about the future of companies, people, without talking about the behavior of individuals and how the future of work. And you rightly use the word hybrid, blended, and of course, education is moving into that category. But Divya, I use a framework which really fits into what you're saying. I call it the 3C economy: the compassionate economy, the contactless economy, and the collaborative economy. So if you have to imagine businesses, you have to imagine them being contactless or digital or virtual, whatever word you choose. Compassionate, you have to reimagine the role. You talk to the relationship, the water cooler talks, the sitting down and having a meal, because those connections that you establish at work also help you do better, because you feel a sense of responsibility and have a relationship. So clearly, the future will not be the same as it was in the way we operated. Give us a sense of what else is likely to happen.
So I think the opportunities will be much higher if companies continue to think about a world where people have a choice, in everything, in every aspect. Like I said, the way they work, the way they learn. So there is scope for new businesses to launch. But I think the companies that will succeed will be the ones that retrospect on how they can provide products to this ever-changing sort of customer portfolio who are now spoiled for choice. I mean, I know I would probably, I've never been an online shopper. I've always wanted, go to a shop, check it out and buy it. But the last 12 months, I have seen my mindset shift. So there's a lot of mindset shifts happening. So there is scope for newer businesses to come. There is also scope for existing businesses to disrupt themselves, because if you look at it, entrepreneurship is all about, can you create a need, can you solve a need at scale, technology allows you to do that. So the businesses that are able to do that across segments, be it fintech, be it agri-tech, health is one thing which, I know that, and I'm saying that because my father's a doctor and he has to go to the hospital. So that's probably one, where, of course, you can have a blended form there also, where you have the physicians probably having online consults happening. We saw that happen also in the last 12 months, and going only when there is an operation required and where there is a physical need of a doctor to be present. So including health, which we could have not even imagined. I mean, meeting your doctor online and the doctor prescribing medicines for you. Every single sector has been disrupted in the last 12 months positively in most cases.
You're right. Touch and feel and being face to face in the physical sense was very important for all businesses. You talk to retail, and I must say, during the October-November time in 2020 also, while we talked of e-commerce, we talked of omni-channel, really the footfalls drove the sales most. While e-commerce also grew, the footfalls were there. So people wanted an experience where they could touch and feel the garment, while jewelry can be tried out using AR and VR, it is not the same. And clearly, Divya, a lot of our behaviors are governed by compulsion. Sometimes we have a choice, like last few months it looked like COVID had gone. So we had the choice of either doing a physical event and a virtual event. And I must tell you, we did a couple of events physically because there is a certain experience. However, the advantage of virtual is we are able to get everybody we want because they don't have to travel. They're able to make time. It is much more convenient for them to be able to come. And also, we're able to draw from international experts we are able to bring in. So there is a trade-off, and there are advantages of both. And yes, you right upfront use the word hybrid and blended. So if we can have a hybrid and blended model, even in events, even in media, in healthcare. And again, telemedicine was very big. And there is something, as you know, called Li-Fi. So there were surgeons in the US performing surgeries in Japan using Li-Fi, laser guided, remote guided surgeries. So clearly that was happening before COVID, but the widespread acceptance, if I may call, yes, of that
has gone up.
Being has really gone up. Yes, now let me ask you.
Similar to EdTech, right? Even though it was there for the last, it's been there for a long time, but then it took a pandemic for people to realize the impact it can have on the learning of a student.
And Divya, there's one more question, again, while we know the advantages of technology, when it came to government schools and certain sections of the society, rather than creating a democratization, COVID, at least for the first few months, created a digital divide. At one point, 90% of schools in Maharashtra in the first 3 months had no access to either the devices or the bandwidth to be able to log on and attend a class digitally. So tell me, what is Byju's, who's such a large player, has an impact? You had 90 million already, and you just kind of got started. So tell me, what are you doing to bridge this digital divide?
Yes, very, very relevant question, because this is something that it should be addressed. And while digital divide is a reality that will always be present, it can get smaller as the years go by, because with the penetration of internet rocket high, we've been seeing the numbers. So it'll anyway get better. But if you actually think about it, the inequities and disparities that exist in the physical world are a much bigger hurdle to solve, because in the physical world, a small section of students have access to good schools and good teachers, and the majority do not have an access to any teacher at all. So while metro cities I can say enjoy good educational infrastructure, it's not the case for the tier 3 cities and beyond. So these challenges can actually be solved at scale, either by using technology as an enabler or by solving it at the infrastructural levels by building good schools, giving access to good teachers. So obviously the former is a more practical solution, but it's something that will take time. And that's where I think EdTech companies like us can really create an impact. I mean, we've started, it's a very small way, but we've launched, and I think there is scope for so many more companies to do this. In November last year, we launched our Byju's Education for All initiative, and under that umbrella we launched the Byju's Give campaign. And in this, what we did is we were cognizant of the fact that there were students with no access to internet, so we initiated a sort of a campaign where, and it's still running, where people across the country could donate a device, and we would load the Byju's content on it for free and give it to students who are underprivileged, who do not have access to the internet, for example. So this is a small initiative, but it's something that can really be scaled up. This is just one of the ideas. There are so many more that can be done. In the last 1.5 months, we've already touched 5 lakh students. I mean, it's really not a big number. That's why, you won't see us talking about it much.
Mithun and Chetan, I think you may ask the other, winners. I think winners have started to join. I can see from the names. Request them to mute. Go on. Education for all. Divya, you were saying. You're very cognizant of the fact that the people that need support, and you can gift them education and access and content. That's what you were saying.
Yes, because actually the courses don't even need internet, so they can all be consumed offline. So you don't even need internet. But this is something, the reason it can scale is because everybody actually has one old device which is lying around. Now on that, if we are loading the Byju's course for free, everybody can learn. So that's just a simple premise on which we launched it. This is one of the ideas that we've started with. There are so many more that you will see us doing, because the aim is anyway to reach out to as many students possible, to create learning for everybody, learning opportunities for everybody. We've launched the product also in multiple languages, most vernacular languages, so that it goes beyond English medium schools as well, and it's available to a student irrespective of the language that they're comfortable in, irrespective of where they are learning from, irrespective of what financial situation they are in. We have something for everybody, but it's something which we can do in a bigger way, we can do in a better way. And I urge actually all companies to think in this manner, because if we can solve for education, the impact is massive, because our high demographic dividend is something that we can really capitalize on. And it's also the other way, it's a double-edged sword, because an unemployed youth is actually a recipe for disaster. So if we all can understand the importance of an educated mind, and when I say educated mind, I'm not talking about a well-filled mind, but a well-formed mind, because that's what we need in the future. Someone who can critically think, who can solve, because nobody can judge what's happening in the next 5 years. None of us could judge what's happening today. But albeit we can't even judge what's going to happen in the next 1 year. So we need to be ready for a tomorrow where anything is possible, where you can adapt yourself to any kind of situation and work.
Thank you so much, Divya. Clearly, you were ready to adapt to the situation and create something on the back of it. Look at where Byju's has come in the last 5 years. Though I know it's been around for more like 9+ years. I want to ask you my last 2 questions. First, we are in April 2021, and COVID has again kind of gained strength, and the last few days have been very disturbing. What is your message of hope for everyone on this broadcast and watching this on various platforms of business world? What is your message of hope where you are?
I just lost the last 30.
I said, what is your message of hope? A lot of people are distraught. Every day I get requests for connecting me to people who can get them a hospital bed, or connecting them to people who can get them certain kind of medicine. So what is your message of hope to these people who are struggling in these difficult times?
As what I've seen, like if you take the entire human civilization, we've shown how resilient we were over the last few centuries, not just now. That anything big we've been able to overcome, however big the challenges we've been able to overcome. And it's something, sometimes it takes few weeks, it takes few months, it may take a few years, but then when we come back, we'll all be stronger, we'll all be better, because the lower we bounce, we actually rise up even that high. So it's probably very like I said, even I feel the pressure, and I understand that today we're not in a great situation that any of us want to be, but this is the time when we need to hang on and hold on, because if we can make it through this, then on the other side we will come out bigger, better and stronger.
Thank you so much. My last question, You are becoming a role model for a lot of people. This is my second conversation with you, and I'm sure the audience has enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it. I've started to suspect your age. You don't sound so young. You sound very mature. I know you're the mother of two young children, and of course, you guys started early. So really, I want to know, who are the women in your life or people in your life you look up to, and why? Who are your role models?
So my role models would be both men and women, and all of them are within my family. And it's as simple as that. Like, frankly, when I was growing up, women entrepreneurship were two words which were very, very sparingly used together. Like today, it's used together a lot more. So it's been all the women who are in my life, and like, be it my mother, be it my in-laws, be it my everybody who has been pushing, my aunts, and all of them who've been pushing me up along the way and encouraging me to take my decisions. And all the men, because now I have two boys, and there is my husband and it's my father, all men. Like I said, if there is no diversity, there is only less diversity at home. Everywhere else in work, there is good diversity. So I think all of them play a big role. And when I was speaking about family, I did stress on the fact that the support from your childhood is extremely important. But I think it's also very important, especially for women, if and when they marry, to marry the right person, because that is very critical in the kind of professional success that they will have. And there is this famous quote I just came up with on my own, which says that don't marry someone who would just buy you a diamond ring. Marry someone who would support you so that you can buy one for yourself. So I really, really believe in that, because if we are women who are gifted with a great education, this is the time, because of the flexible work culture, and this is an opportunity we should not miss. We have an opportunity to make an impact from where we are. We can be at home. Now is the time when we can give time to our family and to work, provided we build a support system for ourselves. So we should capitalize on that.
Thank you so much. You clearly can buy a diamond store now, or a diamond chain, not just a diamond divya. But on a very serious note, thank you so much for talking to BW Business World and bwdisrupt.com. We at Business World are grateful to you for your time and your insight. I'm sure the audience has enjoyed listening to you, and the simplicity and authenticity and the depth of what you say. And you say it with so much conviction. It comes across in the way you say it. So we wish you luck, and wish Byju's luck in its growth and its endeavor to provide education to many people in India and across the world. So wish you luck. I'm sure when we talk next time, 90 million will be much more than 90 million. And yes, Byju's is a Indian company that is making an impact globally. So we're very proud of you, what you have achieved, what Byju's has achieved, and we continue to watch you and engage you through our platform. So thank you so much. God bless you, and look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you
so much. Thank you so much.